Thank you, everybody. Welcome to the Town of Andover Board of Finance meeting for Wednesday, December 18th. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the
republic for which it stands,
one
nation, under God, indivisible,
liberty,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item we have is public speak. Looks like the only member of the public we have is Jerry Creme. Jerry, do you have anything to address the
I'm just here to keep you company and let you keep me company.
So I couldn't hear is that no?
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, some background noise. Okay, we'll move on to changes or additions to the agenda. Does anybody have any proposed changes or additions to the agenda?
Mark, did you see the email from Caitlin Greenhouse? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. She sent us an email asking us to talk about the MEP for the bathroom project at the elementary school.
Yeah, and that's not on any of this. Yeah, okay.
I mean, I think we should add it to the agenda to discuss it. I mean, we have a lot of topics that we'll touch on, but we should add that to the agenda.
Okay, do you want to make a motion then to add it to the agenda? We probably put it under new business 6C, or we could put it anywhere in between somewhere.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to add the, I don't know the exact wording, but add an agenda item to discuss the MEP that was sent to us by the chairperson of the Board of Ed for funding on the
Plumbing project.
Boston O'Neill MEP regarding the bathroom project at the elementary school.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yep.
Was it sent to all of us?
No, it doesn't look like it.
Okay, because I was looking in my emails and I couldn't find it. Thanks.
Yeah. She does, when we talk about it, she does address and send kind of a memo to the Board of Finance. We just received it yesterday. She knew that the agenda had already been set, but because of discussions at the tri-board meeting, we kind of knew this was forthcoming. So, yeah.
Yeah, I just forwarded it to all of you.
Thanks, Mark. I just got it.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No worries. If it was today, I mean, I understand.
Well, yesterday afternoon, but that's all right.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
All right. So Joanne is proposing or has moved that we add discussion of the Board of Ed's request over the MEP Fussin O'Neill project as item 6C under new business. Is that correct, Joanne?
Correct.
Okay.
I'll second that. Oh, do we need a second?
Yeah. Yeah, we should.
Yeah.
Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay, hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you. We'll add that as item 6C. Any other changes or additions to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to old business. The first is review of budget to actual.
So it should have been review of budget to actual. Review of budget to actual was not in your packet, and I apologize for that. Cheryl was en route to Florida and didn't get it to the Board of Selectmen meeting. And we usually just copy the straight one for the Board of Selectmen meeting. What I did put in your packet, which I thought was important, and I didn't realize it got put in place of that, was this is last year's budget to actual, what went to the auditor. And that for us is really good news. The bottom line number is that take away everything from the school and ignore that from the moment because we don't have accurate data. But we had our total revenue was about $187,000 more than we anticipated. The majority of that was our changing to the STIF account, and most of that is accounted by income from the STIF account. Some of that is income from the fact that our new tax collector has been a lot more aggressive about collecting back taxes than previous. So we gained some additional revenues there. So that is on.
Eric, can I interrupt you for just a second?
Sure.
Good information, but I made a mistake. The next item on the agenda is actually the approval of the meeting minutes from 11/20/24.
Okay.
So in order to not mess things up, I think I would ask that you hold those comments further and we'll review the meeting minutes. Did anybody have any question or corrections to the meeting minutes for November 20th? Okay, hearing none. Anybody want to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
Okay, is that Liz?
Yep.
Okay, second.
Second, Bill.
Bill, saw your hand up first. Okay, any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? No, I think everybody's here. Good. Okay. Sorry, Eric. Thank you. The motion passes, and we will move on to the next agenda item, which is actually the old business budget to actual check register, et cetera. So go ahead. Where you are continuing, you're talking
So
about the additional revenue.
I can share my screen if you want to look at the actual numbers, or I can just give you the bottom line, which is, and these are unaudited numbers, so they are subject to change, but they're not going to change tremendously. So the pattern will stay this way.
Eric, can you share your screen, please? I'd
Yep.
rather just see it. Maybe it breaks it down a little.
Is
Thank
it the
you.
same data that's in the packet, though?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Okay, so you should be seeing it there. Looking at revenue first, that's where we are overall in revenue.
187,000.
187.
187.
Correct. Correct.
Nice.
So
I have to
that's-
imagine, Eric, the percentage we're getting on the bank account. I mean, I thought we were going to clear about 50K from that. Are we doing better than that?
yeah, this year I anticipated that we would net about $140,000 out of that.
Nice.
We're actually, if things track the way they're tracking right now, we will probably exceed our projections. Which there is one, thing at some point the board has to wrestle with, and that is a lot of this money that's in the STIF account is essentially our permanent funds. And the reason is that we typically, taxation stays ahead of expenses by at most a month or two, because on an annual basis, our unexpended fund balance is only a little over a month. It's about, 10-12% of our total budget. So most of yet we're maintaining a $2 to $3 million balance in the STIF account. Most of that is in the major capital fund money. And then the question becomes, do we assign, and this is a question for next year's budget, but it's going to have a bearing on how we structure the budget. So it's something I would like hopefully answered sooner rather than later. And that is, do we credit the interest to the individual accounts, or do we credit them to the town overall as just investment interest? Because it makes a difference. And within the town, I don't think we care. But I think the school cares because presumably right now, none of the school money essentially is, or very little of it is in that category. But we should put it in that category. And when we do that, whether it's in the stiff account or whether it's in a money market account at Webster, which we're trying to set up, which will be our other option, they both return roughly the same interest rate, and they're both secured. So
Yeah,
the
I
question,
know exactly what you're saying. It
Who
makes
get-
sense.
who gets the interest? And I don't have, and I feel that that's a Board of Finance decision. That certainly isn't an Eric decision.
Mhm.
Right now, there isn't a lot of money that's in that category. But as we start transitioning to Webster and putting some of those sums of money into a much higher, I mean, frankly, we're going to go up by about a factor of 50 on the amount of interest we get. So it goes from being trivial and something we're not going to worry about to something we should worry about. So
Yep.
I just think that should be a discussion and a decision by the Board of Finance at some point, how you want to handle it. Because in the next budget, if we're keeping this line item, in doing it that way, then, then we're accounting for interest right up front in the budget. And if not, we're accounting for it in the individual accounts, and we're probably going to reduce the amount of money we fund those accounts, so that we're if the interest is going to run into it directly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Eric.
Yep, that makes total sense.
Eric, is this something that, we can readily wait till maybe January's meeting for discussion and vote?
Yep.
Okay.
Not expecting a decision. I'm just giving you a heads up
Yep.
that you will have to make that vote.
Yeah, so I think we should add it to January's agenda just as a straight item. Make it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
completely agree.
Okay. And then on the other side of the coin, the total expenses across the entire town budget ran about $168,000 less than less than proposed. So the bottom line is, I think you can count on about $300,000 in surplus in last year's budget. We won't know exactly until we have audited numbers, but that's a really good bit of news. So happy about that.
Yeah, good, very good news.
And a large part of that is our treasurer getting us set up and finally figuring out how to make the stiff accounts work for the town. So I give her a ton of that credit for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that is, so right
Yeah.
now, unaudited, that's the possible amount to be added to fund balance. Now, when the audit happens, they tend to reclassify things and move some things from permanent funds into non-permanent and back, depending on the auditor's best judgment. So that's not a final number, but it's not going to be 100,000 either. It should be some number north of 300,000 going into the unexpended fund balance.
That's our ballpark. Yep.
Okay. So that's that. The check register was in the packet.
Yep.
Does anybody want to go over that, or do you all have specific questions on that, or what do you want to do with that?
Anybody have questions on the check register items?
I have no questions.
No, not this time.
I have no questions.
Okay.
Eric, there's a $4,000 payment to Tyke Planning and Policy Group. Just curious about that one.
Sure. That's our town planner.
Ah,
Yep. Yep.
All right. We may have talked about that one. You had explained some of the others last meeting, so, okay, I don't remember that one though.
Yep.
All right, well, if there are no more questions for Eric on those items, we can move on to the next agenda item, which is the establishing of the banking relationship with Webster, one line of credit and 2 credit cards. Eric?
So this is in the works right now. I'd hope to have more to report back to you on the progress of that, but Webster is still processing that. Essentially what we're doing is we're dipping our toes in the water. We know we don't like M&T. We've shopped around and looked at 3 or 4 other banks. Webster seems to be the one that, for good reason, has the most government banking in Connecticut because they appear to do a reasonably good job of supporting municipalities. So as we said before, and the Board of Selectmen agreed to, we're going for 2 things. The first is switching our town credit cards over to Webster. And that is just simply a fact that M&T has had our credit cards screwed up ever since they merged. And we've never been able to view them or our balances in real time. And that irritates me and makes the treasurer, crazy, rightfully so. So that's the first thing. The second thing is pursuing a line of credit simply because we should have a line of credit to pay the expenses related to the bridge project that is coming up. Because there are going to be some months when our expenditures or outlays, as we await reimbursement from the state and federal government, will exceed the roughly $500,000 we have in that fund. And our 2 choices are to take it from the unexpended fund balance, which is, it can be done. And the second way to do it is to take it from a line of credit. But I was looking at it this way, and that is, if our money sitting in the bank is earning about 5% interest, and when we take a line of credit, we're looking at somewhere around 7 to 8% interest. The difference in that is financially beneficial to the town to keep the money in the STIF account and work off the line of credit, pay them 8% while we're getting 5%, rather than take the money ourselves. So that will take a town meeting. I've asked the Board of Selectmen to look at holding a town meeting. Looks like there's a few things that will probably go to town meeting. That should be one of them. And the goal is to get that done pretty quickly, sometime in January or February, so we can go.
Isn't
We're
the
just,
project scheduled to begin, Eric, sometime January, February, I thought, or?
so the project will kick off in February with utility relocation.
Okay.
But the first time the town is going to have a lot of money that it's going to have to outlay is when the actual bridge members come in. When they deliver the prefab bridge sections, those are alone, that bill to the contractor will be about $600K. So including labor and everything else, we're going to have a month or so where our expenditures are probably closer to $1 million. So we have basically till June. If we had to float it as a town, we could. My concern with floating that personally is that if we start taking unexpended fund balance or raiding other funds temporarily to pay for it, what happens if we really do have a natural disaster? I mean, I don't want to dip into that unless I absolutely have to.
So Eric, just a stupid question, I guess. When they're delivered, those key structures, like, is it due on delivery, or what are our terms? Like, do we have terms that we can pay the contractor, or is it like due, those things are delivered, they need a check today? Like, what are our terms for payment for those deliveries?
So basically, bridge projects, we use we have our own construction management and construction inspection firm hired. That's actually a DOT requirement anyway. So they are the ones that determine the billing schedule. So when they present us a bill, I think it's net 30 to pay the bill, but we cannot apply for reimbursement unless we have paid the bill. We
Gotcha.
pay a bill and then we ask for a reimbursement from the state and federal government.
I see.
Yep.
Thank
Two
you.
questions. One, keying off that, how long does the state and federal government have to pay us back? 30 days as well?
Whatever they feel like it.
Well, that's a really good question. And that's been, I've asked that pointedly, and been told the typical payment schedule is about 30 days.
Okay.
In no case should it be longer than 60 days.
All right. So the
but-
the follow-up question is, on those months that we think will be over, that we think we're going to have a net overage, what's the ballpark? Is it about 500,000? You were telling me you have about $500,000 in the fund and we're kind of rotating through it. And then we might have months where we owe $1 million. So is it about 500,000? If we were to fund this internally, this is the point of my question. If we were to fund it internally, are we talking about $500,000 roughly?
I think at any one time there could be up to, so that was also a question I've had very pointedly, to the state DOT and to our construction management firm. And what they've said essentially is that worst case scenario, we should be out of pocket $1 million to just slightly over $1 million. Probably we'll never be out of pocket more than $1 million at any one time, which would leave us about $500,000 short.
Okay.
So
That's the magnitude we're talking about. That's kind of what I wanted to get to, because that's our decision point, right? Do we float it ourselves and accept $500,000 temporarily out of our fund, or do we do what you're proposing and do the bridge loan?
right. But here's the other thing to think about. We have 2 steep grants we're trying to get to the point to execute on. One of them is about $500,000. Those are all reimbursement grants. So we pay the money out and then they refund us.
Right.
Some of that is in the multi-use fund anyway, but it depends how fast that project goes. Because the steep grant, you're not necessarily asking for money back every single month. We're asking for it back probably in 2 increments. So we could be out a fair bit of money for that. And I don't really anticipate we're going to be far enough along with the other steep grant, which is the replacement of the building at Center Street. And part of that is I think that's going to end up, because that has been shifted to a prevailing wage job, we're going to be over what we initially estimated for that. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to shave money from the multi-use building fund by using more public works time to do excavation and other things for the first steep grant, and then hoping to realize some savings to that. So when we go over budget, and we're pretty sure we will, on the other part, we have enough money and we basically swapped labor for money for that project, if that makes sense.
So just to clarify, if we're talking about $500,000, and we would get a loan for what? You wouldn't look for $500,000. You would probably look for a little more than that.
Yeah, I would look for $1 million,
$1 million
probably
loan
$1 million line of credit.
for like how long? Like I don't know how this works. I honestly,
Month or
I'm a
two.
little bit financially illiterate here, but is it a 3-month? And the variance is 3%, right? If we're earning 5 and we're paying 8, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, that is what we're talking about. I mean, so yeah, we're not talking about, because we're only talking about not a lot of months of interest out there. So I don't think we're
Yeah.
talking about big bucks. it's not the question of that. It's just philosophically whether you try to do it all in-house or you try to go with the line of credit.
I'm just sort of trying to get my mind around a guesstimation of what the cost to the town is for the loan. Like, as opposed to us gutting up and fronting it ourselves, what's that 3% over X months on $1 million gonna cost us? Is
Right,
it
well-
$10,000? Is it 20? Is it 30? Is it 50? That's
Well,
just so I know.
The
So I have
3% difference for an entire year would be $30,000 in interest.
right, and it's not a whole year, right?
But it's only
So
3
so-
months, so you're
So
talking.
for per month, it's about $3,000 ballpark difference.
okay.
Not a
Okay.
lot of money.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I just want to know what it is, so I
No, I
understand.
do too.
Yeah,
Good to understand the scope.
Yep.
yeah, no,
Order of
Agreed.
magnitude we're talking about, so.
right.
Eric, can I, has this been approved? I know you were talking about it at the Board of Selectmen meeting, and they had some concerns as well. As far as,
It-
I mean, using it as little as possible, maybe, or, only when you, I don't know how to phrase it, but when it's an absolute necessity, of course, trying to get by, making the payments, doing whatever you could. But then when it's, am I on the right track there? I thought that they had some concerns as well.
Yeah, they do. And I'm not saying, I'm not asking for a motion, from the Board of Finance right now
Yeah.
either. The reason is we don't have full details. I can't tell you what the exact interest rate we're paying. So until we're presented with the final package of what this is going to be, I'm not looking for approvals. But once we have that, we're going to need approvals fairly quickly because this really should go to town. I mean, neither me nor the Board of Selectmen nor you have the authority to authorize this. This is a town meeting that authorizes this or not.
Okay.
Even at that small amount of money, it still has to go to a town meeting?
$1 million swing loan is not a small, that's definitely in the realm that has to go to a town meeting. And
Well,
I did
guess
ask,
I was thinking of the.
Not the
terms-
interest.
I was thinking in terms of what the cost to the town is.
Right,
not
but-
in- But
right,
I see what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. I was just thinking in terms of, $3,000-4,000, but it's actually, I guess they look at it as $1 million. I understand.
Right, because in theory we could authorize it, and then Eric could spend $1 million. He won't, but he could. Right.
yeah, you're not wrong there.
Let's not make Eric mad.
I have
anyway.
no intention of spending $1 million without a perfectly good reason.
All right.
Okay,
Well, thanks for that info. I do appreciate it. I'm sorry to pepper you with questions there, but I think I've got my mind around it.
Yeah.
no, you're the Board of Finance. I mean, all those are good questions.
Okay, well, if we have nothing more on that, I guess the next thing would be go to the tri-board meeting review.
I can start this off if you want.
Yeah, that'd be
I mean,
good. Go ahead.
Yes, so we all came together. I think the meeting, the meeting went well.
Went very good.
Obviously, it definitely went well. The beginning, we had the agenda and everybody had their chance to speak. Obviously, we got weighed down a lot with which, Caitlin and I knew that we would, discussing the capital, the AES capital. I just wanted to, capital improvement fund usage protocols, discussion, possible actions. Because that has been a big ticket item and it's, we've been discussing it for like a year with the policies and then the policy had gotten nixed that Shannon and Rob had worked on. So, we wanted to put that at the top. And as expected, it went back and forth a little bit at the beginning, like we always do. Which after a lot of thought is why I decided to add another agenda item tonight that I want to discuss with all of you so that we don't get held down in that kind of place again, and we can kind of just go to meetings and understand what we're there for. So again, it went well. We had a lot of that back and forth and, talked about trust issues and things of that nature. And it was very transparent because we're all in front of each other. And I think that, having the moderator that we did,
Chad did a great job.
yeah, he really did. He likes to keep things going, flowing. If he feels like, one side's getting a little, he's able to come back to it. And he really was good at just saying that we all, and I think I piped up there too, that we've kind of at some point have to try to lose the past a little, and like the trust is going to have to be there that we're all going to do the right thing and the protocols will come along. Jeff McGuire also talked about, getting a list together of the priorities for the capital fund and things of that nature.
A 5-year plan is what he's really looking for.
5-year plan.
What are your top
Absolutely.
wants?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did send that draft out to everybody kind of what I've seen used before. Just, it can be, expounded on, expanded, but it's basically just listing your priorities in order, giving the amounts of them. And they seem to be receptive to that. In the meeting, it was broken down then afterwards where we had the Board of Ed and the superintendent talked about the major items that'll affect the future and the demographics and the enrollment and all of that. So we heard on that. The Board of Selectmen and Eric then presented on the town major factors coming up. And then our part was to talk about the expectations of the Board of Finance, but we kind of outlined that we needed to
Hear
we
from
needed
the
a little
board.
time. Yeah, we
Yeah,
needed a little time to digest everything, talk at our meeting, going forward with that. So overall, those that attended, I thought it went well. I think towards the end, Jed got us together with like, let's just work together, and try to make this happen with things going forward.
I think,
Yeah.
to add on to that, Joanne, I think the things that the Board of Ed was very receptive to, and I think really kind of set the stage, was that 5-year plan
Mhm.
and what the list and priority and what the amounts were. And they were very, and that what he said is, you give us a 5-year plan and we will build a plan along with the Board of Finance to figure out how to fund that. Like, just tell us what you need and priorities are. We understand that you have these priorities, but we can't do anything about it without a plan, because you can't have everything this year. You got a budget for these things. You got a plan for them. And that's where they were like, yeah, we understand that. We have to, it's going to take the town a few years to put together each one of those budget amounts for the things that they want to spend money on. And in that light, they were very, very receptive. I think, like you said, Joanne, they didn't have any, real concerns with that. I thought they were very open to just coming up with that plan and those amounts and moving forward.
And it's a positive thing. We created
Yeah.
this account, for this purpose. We know there's going to be things that have to be done. There's maintenance. I don't know if that's the right word. Capital
It can be.
project, capital project items that need to be done and
Don't
funded.
even start.
Yeah. And,
Not me.
that's a good thing. And instead of getting stuck on, the fine little words, of things, let's just try to move forward and make it happen. I also thought the Board of Selectmen, his opinion on there, because we get back and forth with, well, how's it going to be approved? What's the process? What's that? I think we all agreed that, that's going to be built as we go. There's got to be a little bit of trust involved. Like I said, when we get to the next item, I'm going to tell you why I wanted this, my one little item brought up tonight. When we get to the new business, I'll talk about that. It's very brief. But I mean, I felt like Jeff McGuire, who was there, had talked about, they know these projects are coming, just, they even verbally listed them out. Everyone knows that's gonna happen, and then they'll do their best. Like you said, Bill, every single thing can't be funded right from the get-go, but emergency things or those of most important or safety items.
And I think he did add to that, CIP is a definite part of the process too. You have
Right.
to have a list, you have to submit to CIP. There is
Right.
a process that we use today that works.
Mhm.
So their thoughts were that we don't really need to create a new process. And I know you have something to present, Joanne,
Yeah, it's just about the depositing and different things like that,
Right.
to make
but-
everyone feel secure.
But
Yeah,
I think they were okay with the whole fact that we have a process that works today. You submit your 5-year plan, the amounts to the CIP, and that's the normal process. And then you figure out how we're going to fund them. And everybody seemed to be very receptive to that.
yeah, we really came around to that. Yep.
I just wanted to mention, by the way, thank you guys for those who were able to make it. I was so frustrated I couldn't make it that night. I had a little natural disaster of sorts in my house, which is
About
sorted
that.
out now. But it was like the worst possible timing. I was literally like half an hour before the meeting, and I had no water. But just listening to that, I'm happy to hear all of this. A lot of this boils down to people trusting each other and being willing to wing it a little bit. When Shannon and I attempted to write this all down into every little step and define
Mhm.
everything, it became a bit of a mess, and it ultimately, as we know, didn't work out. So I would be thrilled if we could get to a more collaborative, more trusting kind of process where we can just go through it. And one of the things to remember about CIP, and I'm a member of CIP, we meet tomorrow night. CIP kind of reviews things and blesses it or doesn't bless it, but let's be honest, CIP doesn't run anything. Like it's there as an advisory committee. It's important, yes, but people need to not be scared of CIP. That if they bring something forward to CIP and CIP doesn't like it, it's not the end of the world. And that's, I think, part of the trust, I think, that has to be there. Like, bring it to CIP, we'll talk about it. It's not like CIP is a bunch of people who are sitting there going, well, our purpose in life is to say no, you know? So hopefully that'll be good. I would love to see a capital plan from the school. I have talked to them about that before.
Mhm.
Joanne, was there any
Regardless of whether it's
action
a
item? Oh,
5 or
sorry?
10.
Hey, were there any action items kind of that came out of this, other than a couple of things we're going to talk about?
The action items, no, I think
Fair
we did talk about, yeah. The thing I want to talk about after, I'm hoping can be a quick action item, but just trust was a big thing. And, I think it was told to, or requested of the Board of Ed that they do put together that priority list and get it over to, I guess the Board of Selectmen was requesting it. Obviously, it has to go through the proper channels and Board of Finance, which Caitlin did with the other
Probably a
items.
lot of thought that needs to go into that. It's not going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. But they have needs and they need to sort it out.
and I guess
Absolutely.
they are working. They said that one of their action items on their board is they are putting the plan together this year, the 3 to 5 years or whatever they're, targeting. So we should see that in the future. But we also understood the bathroom thing has kind of been on hold. So I think that's why they were kind of pushing them to, since there was money budgeted already in this year, that's probably why they've pushed that along to get going on that. But
And
nope. At the end, we just hope to have one or two meetings a year just to get everyone together. And
Right.
that's why
It
I'm
wasn't-
hoping sorry, Bill, just this one last thing. Once we clarify, we don't have to start off with like 50 minutes of the rehashing anymore. Hopefully we're going to move forward next time and take care of business. Yeah. But we all needed to say that. Whoever needed to speak, and they did. So,
And I think they were also, in the end, I forget who brought it up, but like the parking lot, it's a good thing that didn't happen. Like Jeff said, we never ever shot you down for anything. And I think it might have been Shannon might have said, yeah, the parking lot. But then in the end, everybody was kind of happy that, it wasn't the number one priority. That's probably the number 3 priority or something like that. So a lot of good came out of that tri-board meeting that I thought was really helpful to have everybody together in that room. I think the other thing I just wanted to add to the overall takeaway, Mark, the last time we got together was we weren't sure what the role of the Board of Selectmen was going to be in the finance, the budget process. And we thought there were to be like these joint meetings for the whole budget season. And, I asked the question and Jeff McGuire said, no way. We're not, we'll see you in March. Like they do not plan to be part of the budget process.
No, I think the thing is just that initial meeting. There's just supposed to be an initial meeting to set set the priorities, understanding the schedule, et cetera, you know. probably.
Right, but I think the last time we got together, there was some question about what the role was gonna be of the Board of
Right.
Selectmen and if they were gonna be part of this whole, and I asked the question, sure. And that is not the expectation at all, that they would be
Okay, yeah.
for these meetings.
So
Can I ask you a question? Can I ask a question?
Yep, go ahead, Liz.
I just have like a historical question about how the AES Capital Fund came into being.
That's a good question.
If you
Right.
really, I can go
Rob,
ahead and
yeah,
take-
please.
So just generally speaking, there's no, RAM has their own capital budget, right? It's
Mhm.
separate.
Mhm.
And we even voted separately, right?
Right.
AES has never historically had that. And yet they, like any school, have capital needs, right? So the only thing that was really available to sock money away for some future thing was their 2% non-lapsing fund, which wasn't really designed specifically as a capital fund. Furthermore, they were doing a lot of good work getting grant money and this and that and plugging things in their budget. And they were, at times, they'd get to the end of the year and they'd have extra money. And their thought process was, well, we can go like gangbusters and try to spend the money we've been given, or we can be allowed to save it and save it for these purposes, these things that we know are coming down the pike that frankly, we or the town, everybody at the end of the day, we're all going to have to pay for. And so the idea was to incentivize the Board of Ed to not go ahead and spend money in a budget, like preload in supplies or anything like that for the next year, just to take the money if there's actually an overage, not an overage, sorry, let me rephrase that.
Surplus.
If there's actually money
Surplus.
left over in a budget,
Mhm.
to go ahead and say to us, can we put that away? Can we put that aside for a capital project that we know full well is coming? And will you bless it? And that kicked off a discussion, and it's been a lot from then to now. But at the end of the day, the board, that's the ultimate idea here, is that the incentive is to spend actually what you need to spend, not more, and plan for the future.
And,
That was
and the AES fund was designed so they could put that money in there, it would stay there. And then, I think this year is the first year, Eric, right, that we actually, as a town, excuse me, this year is the first year as a town that we put $100,000 into that same
That's correct.
capital
Right.
fund to start this money growing and doing something. I'll be right back, guys. I just,
Yeah.
hey, Kathy,
Yep.
I'm all
That,
set.
that, that's exactly right. And it's all about incentives, and it's about encouraging people to not use it or lose it.
The
Right.
Board of Selectmen also, I think, Eric, too, right? Didn't they? That is going to align right with what I want to talk about with my item afterwards. But I believe the Board of Selectmen discussed too, unless it came out of what Rob said, just establishing a fund this year. Am I right, Eric? I think the Board of Selectmen started it.
No, we got to create that. The Board
well,
of Finance created it.
Well, or did
Yes.
we decided
We
to
did.
do it
We
that way?
we created that.
I go to so many meetings, I knew it was discussed there, and, oh, we created it, they funded it, they decided the funding amount. Okay, sorry.
correct.
Confused.
So,
Right.
so both boards were clearly in favor of capital
Right.
funds.
Right,
And, it's water under the bridge, but, I had advocated years ago when we set up all the other town capital funds for doing one for the Board of Ed at the same time. And it was really kind of, so what I'm saying is I'm absolutely in favor of this. That building will have major capital expenditures that need to be made to keep it in decent shape and replace major mechanical systems and things like that, roofs, and we need to establish a fund. And we did, and that's a great thing, and that's a smart budgeting tool moving forward, as far as I'm
So-
concerned.
Let me ask this. So are you saying that the other departments in town have their own capital fund as well?
I hope not.
Because
Not,
what,
A lot of them.
what I
Many of
heard,
them.
what I heard from Jeff was that the buildings are all owned by the town.
Yes.
And that is the purpose for the SIP, for people to gather up their projects and say, look, this is what we need. You go to the SIP, you get it approved, and then that gets presented to the town, and then the town can see overall what projects are coming down the line so that the town can overall make a plan for the various buildings.
More or less,
simplifying
yeah,
that?
that's right.
And it's
You
basically
know,
what he said.
yes.
So I guess I'm wondering why they would have a special fund that if other departments didn't have a capital fund.
Oh,
because
we
the
needed
Board
it.
of Ed is carved. Here's the thing: in the town charter and in state statute and stuff like that, the Board of Ed has a lot of independence. They're
Yes.
carved out of a lot of things.
Mm.
It's just the way the statutes read. It's just the way the charter reads, and this leads to the question of who gets to decide what. And unfortunately, if you don't have the trust established, you get into these, frankly, unproductive turf wars over who gets to make certain decisions. At the end of the day, it's all our money. This is something that Jeff says all the time, right? It's all our money in the end.
It's the
And
town's
he's
money.
right, and he's right. However, when you go into try to draft a document and say this is the rights and responsibilities of this board versus that board, now you get into what the charter says, what the statutes say, and so forth. We tried to end around that. Shannon and I's best efforts ultimately failed. But it sounds like Deus Ex Machina may have happened, and we may get to a better place regardless, which would be lovely. But yeah, at the end of the day, the Board of Ed is not the same thing as like the fire department. They have rights and responsibilities that are laid out in charter and in state law that are not the same as like Public Works.
Right.
That's
And
what
it
it
comes
was.
down to kind of like nitpicking of the budget money that they have. They are responsible for the maintenance and operation of that school, as well as educating the kids. But the town owns the property, the building, and it comes to what is a capital item and what is not. And obviously a building is
Right.
a capital item.
Right.
And the way I got Shannon kind of to accept it and stop the arguing was I said, Shannon, if you had to build a new school, how would you go about doing that? And she just kind of looked down and accepted. Yeah, you'd have to go to the town and it's a capital expenditure. So that's how
And that's true. And then at the same time, you know, it's funny when you look at the actual underlying stuff, the charter, the statutes and everything, it literally says things like the Board of Ed controls the operation and maintenance of the school, which at the same time the town owns, right? So you get these ambiguities and you can get lost in the weeds easily. I swear to you this is true because I got lost in those weeds and it can be super frustrating. So anyway, my take for what it's worth on the whole thing is if we can simplify and trust each other and see how it goes, I'm thrilled. I'd be thrilled because every single time I tried to put together a document that was respectful of literally everyone and comported with state statute, town charter, you know, and so forth, we ran into problems. So to the extent that we can get past that, I'm thrilled.
Can I add?
Thanks to everyone who went to that meeting.
Yeah, I just want to add, Liz, to your point, I want to circle back to what Rob said, and I just think it's important to have this account because if there
Yeah.
were surpluses or money left over at the end of the year, by establishing this, it creates a trust within the Board of Ed that their funding that the town did vote in for them will go back to their building, you know, to the building.
and
which
not
is
back to the
town
general
thing.
fund.
It's not a perfect you know, it made sense because instead of spending, like he said, some of the surplus that was left over on supplies for the next year or whatever, because there was grants, at least we had an avenue in an account where this would go back to the repairs of the projects that are gonna happen there.
Right. And I'd
So
rather have
again,
them-
I want to jump into my part so bad, but I'm honoring
Okay.
our agenda
Yeah.
because we're touching on it so much. that I
Yeah.
have to just keep my mouth shut.
Yeah.
Because it's so simple and it does kind of, address all of this. And I think that in the end, it is on the town's, it's a town account. We created it in the town budget. The 100,000 was funded by what was, and ultimately the decision process is going to be made through CIP and those kind of things. So it's taking in all kinds of however
We're all gonna be in the boat.
priorities are met or whatever, or decided with the
We're all gonna
trust.
be in the boat.
That was a big word that I brought out, Rob, that time, that at some point we're gonna have to jump in and trust and get
Yeah,
this
like
thing rolling.
None of this
instead of-
works. I don't care how you draft it. None of this
Right.
works if you don't trust each other.
And people from all sides have thrown it out there that they want this to happen. So anyways, that's it on the tri-board meeting.
Yes, I appreciate
Until
that
we
so
move to
much.
my
Thank you
next
so much.
item.
And I'll shut up, but I also just want to say again, the incentivization here of I'd rather have them save for a rainy day, or not just a rainy day, a plumbing problem or whatever it might be, than think to themselves, I got to spend another $50,000 in my budget or I lose it. It's just, I'm not saying that they were irresponsible with their money. I'm saying humans are humans, and you don't want to set up the wrong incentive structure.
Yeah,
So
that's
this
good.
sets up
Good
one
planning
that's good.
goal worked out, yeah.
So,
Okay.
Just,
That's it. I'm
I
done.
think,
I'm
I think
good.
we should move
Last-
on, honestly.
yeah,
I mean, this is
completely
one
agree,
review
Mark.
of a meeting, so
Mark,
I
totally
just
agree.
want to get through. This is December. We
Yeah.
often don't even have this meeting, so I'd like
Yeah.
to, go ahead, Bill.
Mark, the last thing is, I just wanted to let you know that when we get into the budget discussions, that we do have some numbers from the Board of Ed, and from Eric in the town on insurance costs that are going up, new teachers that are needed. So we do have some numbers to work with when we do get in the budget. Also came out of this tri-board meeting. They did give us, kind of what they're looking at. So we know where to go when we start putting the budget together. So we do have those numbers. We don't have to go over them now. I just wanted you to know that we do have those numbers in that meeting.
Okay, good. All right. Well, if I could, then I would suggest let's move on to our new business. 6A is the AES Capital Fund Policy. So Joanne, you had proposed.
Yeah, so just
yep.
kind of after going to the tri-board meeting, and once again, we had about the hour of the discussion where you see a little bit of the mistrust and all of that. I went home and thought about it for like a week and revamped it, and I said, I know we threw away the policy and all the little, particular language that Rob and Shannon had worked on, but I thought that, and I sent it all out to you tonight because I didn't want it to be out there and to get around and everybody to be talking about it ahead of time. I know I sent it to you, Eric, and to Mark. I don't know, would
I
you be
have it.
able to? Okay, it's very simple. It's using language that Rob and Shannon put together as far as the depositing of the money and what, just the account in general. I'm hoping everyone would see this as favorable.
Can Mark share it for us? Did you send it to Mark? Can Mark share
Yeah,
it?
I sent it to Mark and Eric
Or
and
Eric, one of you?
I'll share it right
It's-
now.
Okay,
I
thank you.
Yeah,
think
it's
it's
very-
super simple. I think we all got it, but yeah, it's really, really pared down.
I just wanted to say that, we established the account. We're gonna call it the AES Capital Fund. Or whatever was in Cheryl's language.
Yeah,
I'm pretty
yeah.
sure the treasurer has named it this. I know we were trying to name it all kinds of different things, but we're gonna trust that we know what that stands for. Everything to do with the school, projects at the school, that's designated as a capital thing and not a daily running of the building. So the town created the account. The town may choose to deposit money into this capital fund through its budget process. We understand that. It was done this past year. This is the important part to build so that the school, what Rob was alluding to tonight, we want to be able to let them know that if they had a surplus left at the end of the prior year after the audit, they could go ahead and take that and put it in this account. So the Andover Board of Education may also choose to deposit money from its budget into the AES Capital Fund. At the end of the fiscal year, on June 30th of each year, the BOE may transfer unspent money from the BOE's budget from the prior year into this capital fund. That can slowly build it up. You know, if they have 100,000 left over, they could add it in and we would be okay with that. I'm certainly okay with that because I know there's plenty of projects to be funded in the future. And then I just thought we couldn't establish, we all decided that we were going to trust and we would move forward with how projects were going to be chosen to be funded, but I thought it would be alleviate any worry that just this little thing that all the money in the AES Capital Fund shall be spent on capital projects for Andover Elementary School. And, you know, the grounds, however we wanted to put that. I like this idea to, you know, it's kind of talks about what we wanted to do, but it also speaks to if there's money left over in any current budget. I'd love to see it go into this fund. And then they won't feel like they have to pre-buy supplies for next year or something if these things are more important. So thoughts from anyone else?
Well, and I think the bottom line there is section 2 just kind of adds that element of trust that this
Thank
money
you.
is to be used for AES school capital improvements. Now, we all know, and we've talked about this in the past, if, you know, a plane fell out of the sky and hit the town hall, then that money would be available to rebuild the town hall. It's some emergency and some disaster. But that under no other circumstances would the Board of Finance say, oh, we're going to take that money and use it for something else. They have to know and feel comfortable and trust that the money that they save and the money that the town puts into that AES capital fund is theirs and it's not going to be robbed for anything else. That's the most important piece of this whole thing.
I agree. I would just say that, you know, I have no particular objection to this in any way, guys. I would just say the shoals that Shannon and I ran ground on repeatedly were things like defining what is capital, and all the little nitty gritty specifics. This policy here, if I understand it correctly, and I think that I get the vibe, this policy here is basically saying to heck with that. I'm gonna just lay out a mission statement. And this is how and people are going to interpret this in good faith and we're going to move forward. I'm fine with that. I'll just point out that I could, if I was inclined to do so, pick at this thing all sorts of ways. By pointing out, you know, what is capital, what is not, and all this and that.
Yeah, but we went
I'm fine
there,
with
right?
I'm fine with it.
We had a lawyer and an insurance person go through that and we saw.
Yeah, you had a
I mean,
lawyer
I'm
and a
not,
guy who
I'm not begrudging
you had a
'cause I
lawyer
think
and a guy
you
who
guys did a
works
good
with
job.
lawyers all day,
Yeah.
right? And we were unable to get there. So I am perfectly willing to admit defeat, and this is great. By all means.
This is
I'm just
an
going to point
olive
out,
branch to
because I'm
have
that
them feel
annoying
comfortable.
insurance guy, that there are, if somebody wanted to nitpick this, they could.
Oh,
I'm just pointing it out.
Yeah, but I think the
Yeah.
basics are, the important things are there, right? I mean, it makes it clear what the capital fund is,
Sure.
you know, how it's funded. It makes it clear that it's used for, you
Sure.
know, AES projects, you know,
Yeah.
it's not part of the charter, but I think as a policy, it's simple and I think, you know, gets us.
I'm
covered.
good with it, and I'm happy to vote for it. I'm just gonna say, you know, there were iterations of the drafts that Shannon and I came up with that we got more and more complex as we went along, as we tried to address every objection. This one just basically is like, never mind, and I'm good with that.
And we may need to add to it at times or clarify something, you know.
I'm just saying, that's all. And I mean, no, that's a compliment. Not, this is like complimentary, not a nitpick. I'm not
oh,
actually.
I want to make them, after going to the tri-board meeting and then sitting, you know, we always start off with that hour of back and forth and the getting to the trust part. So I thought this would simplify it, the funds that could be deposited into it, that we were fine with them putting any surplus into it, That's the main thing. Yeah, thank you,
Yeah,
Mark.
and I mean,
Okay.
it
I
removes-
I
it
think we're
removes
just
the
touching
bit-
on go ahead.
It removes the bit where we okay it, for instance, as one example. Like the old policy was like they could ask us to put money in and we would okay or not okay. This one removes that, right? They can just choose to do it.
Mhm.
That's a gesture of good faith to them. I'm on board with that. I'm just saying that's something that in the past, when we brought it up, we would debate it. We would sit here in our meeting and we debate it.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm cool with it. I'm not, I
Yeah.
have no objection. And if this flies and if this works, I'm thrilled.
I think,
Bill?
I was just gonna say that I think the way we can kind of get around, what is the definition of, I mean, there is a clear definition. You can look it up, what a capital expenditure is, but take that out of the process and just say, I think if we were to need to add something to section 2 at all, or any part of this, it is the list of their wants that they're going to present to CIP, which, Celeste and I forget the other person's name.
Caitlin,
Caitlin.
Caitlin, thank you. They have a list they're going to come up with. Okay. These are the capital things that they know they have to come to the town for the money for. That's not in their budget. They put that list together, and that's the list of capital expenditures that they want funded by
Yeah,
the
and
town. So
yeah.
it goes in here that these, the list of funds that they submit to CIP are the things that are protected by this fund, if you will. And they're defining it because they're going to give us the list of their top, I thought, was it 3 or 5?
Yeah, I love that idea, Bill. The idea that their list of capitals is what we mean by capital.
Exactly. Right. And they need the town to fund those things. So they have to come to the town and say, these are our capital wants. Now there's no argument about what is a capital and what isn't. So it's,
I like
should
it.
should it be indicated in here and made clear that the decision is made by the town or the Board of Finance or whoever?
Well,
On
I think,
approving-
yeah,
Right. Like-
we could start adding more detail, but I think that's just part of our normal processes. So it doesn't necessarily need to be. I mean, clearly the town controls the money because it's
Right.
in a town account.
Yeah,
So
the
we
attempt
probably
at
don't need to add that just
Yeah.
because
So
it
they
would be part
can't
of our
actually
normal capital expenditure process.
We tried to define all that.
Right,
and
Liz, we
it
had
got
that
us
at one.
bogged
Yeah.
down so badly that I'm converted. Like, let's do this. Because when we tried to lay out the step-by-step process, it just led to more problems.
right.
Let's just roll with this and see how it works. That's what I say.
Because I think we agreed at that meeting, that, like you said, there was going to be the trust and we were going to just get to the process. When we tried to lay out, like you said, Rob, every single step, I was more concerned of what could go into it. This was it. Obviously, we're going to have some kind of vote down the road or whatever with what happens. This is just defining this little piece of it, of what money could go into it.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yep. Go ahead.
Is this going to be reviewed by the town's attorney?
No, I don't think it needs
No,
to be.
this
This is
doesn't
an
need-
internal Board of Finance policy.
Okay.
So there's nothing legal around this, and there's nothing saying it couldn't be added to, amended, clarified in 3 months if we find that it's just not working or we need just more information. So, I mean, we could have it, but again, it's nothing legal, so it doesn't really need to.
I mean, the last draft that Shannon and I produced went to the town attorney and it didn't go well. So,
Yeah. True.
I like that it's our internal Board of Finance policy, and I think
Yeah.
it will alleviate, the Board of Ed, I think, would be in favor of it. I haven't showed anyone there, but I think this at least lays out a few things that might,
well, yeah, obviously they have to weigh in, but, I'm happy to bless it. So let's see what they say.
So are we gonna vote on this to see if we want to
We
take
can
this
go
as?
ahead and take a motion to adopt this as
Alright.
the Board of Finance policy.
I'll go ahead and so move that we adopt Joanne's draft AAS capital fund policy pursuant to subject to review from BOE.
I'll second that.
Okay, so you're saying we need to have them review it?
Well, don't you think?
I don't
Yeah, it'd be
think,
fine.
Well,
I
we
think
can
that they
amend
can
it
provide-
there.
provide- you can certainly provide input.
I'm happy to just pass it. But obviously we all have to be on board. So
I-
no, I'm fine. Okay.
Okay.
I'll amend my motion. I'll just say let's go ahead and I'll move that we pass Joanne's AS Capital Fund policy for the Board of Finance.
That's what I
and
want.
then we'll communicate that to BOE and hope that
Yeah, we get feedback. That's good.
My intention was to send it to them after this meeting and, for their comments and.
say that like we passed it, we blessed it. What do you guys think?
Okay,
Mhm.
That kind of
hold
idea?
on, guys, we're getting a little bit
Okay.
out of order here. So Bill, are you still seconding the motion as
Yeah.
Rob
Yes,
described it? Okay,
A-
so
as
we
Rob
go into
amended it.
discussion then.
By amended,
as amended.
Okay.
yeah.
This is
And
kind of the board.
Eric, you have your hand up, I see. So
Policy.
let's, you
Oh.
got input?
Yeah, so hey, it's your policy. You can set whatever you want, not opposed to it in any way, shape, or form. The only thing to me that's a little unclear is you say after the end of the fiscal year on June 30th, they may transfer the funds. Personally, I would be more comfortable saying after the audit is complete, they may transfer the funds
Good.
so that we're sure that we don't get into the same question we had last year, which is they thought they had this amount of money, and then after the audit, they had this amount of money, which happens.
Good
Good.
Can you
point.
remind me when the audit is supposed to be done? Like if
Uh,
we hit our target, finally, when would it be done?
So we would have had the final audit already. It's technically supposed to be done by December 31st.
Okay,
Mm,
But
that's a big,
that's a big
But-
gap.
yeah.
That's a big gap.
But it doesn't
But you're
really,
right,
it
though.
doesn't really
But he's-
change anything for the purpose of the purposes, right? It just means that technically, the money's not going anywhere, right?
Right.
So it just gets moved in the accounts
And
after
it
the
says
account.
unspent money, so.
Yeah, that's a
But-
really good point, though. Oh,
You might want to.
shit.
That budget thing is the gap that's going to hang them up because again, we haven't even had our audit finished yet, right?
well,
Someday we'll get it done on time.
it's actually not. Honestly, I think it's unrealistic to expect it to get done on time. So we're done and have everything handed off to the auditor well before they have the capability to review. Because there are so few auditing firms today that unless you're like the first client or second client that they tackle, it's not going to get done. Last year, I think 30 towns out of 169 missed the absolute last drop dead date, which is next June 30th. So, and probably well under half the towns in the state missed the state's, official deadline of December 31st. There just isn't enough auditor capacity to do it.
So do you have a proposed language that we should use, Eric, in that
Mhm.
line right there? Or do you want to stick with the audit word or do you want to, where do we go?
I would say, at the end of the fiscal year after the audit, and just keep it that simple, the BOA may transfer unspent funds,
Yeah. I mean,
because that's when we would do it anyway.
yeah.
Okay,
If there were ever an emergency, we could always address it on a case by case basis somehow, I think.
sure. Okay,
Just an internal policy, but I think it does make sense.
Okay.
perfect.
So you want to amend?
Well, I think we have to vote on the motion as presented. So I would say that if we're not
Vote it
comfortable with
down.
the language, we would probably vote it down and then reintroduce a different motion. So
Right.
if there's no more discussion, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? All those opposed?
Opposed.
No.
Any abstentions? Okay, motion is defeated and we can entertain other motions.
All right, so we want to amend section 1B, right?
Correct.
And at the end of our Board of Education, we also choose to deposit money from its budget at the end of the fiscal year
And after the,
and upon the completion of the audit.
Yeah, so we transfer unspent money to the Board of Education's budget.
So at
for
the
the
end of the
prior
fiscal
year.
year,
Yeah.
or maybe remove June 30th. Just say at the end of the fiscal year and upon the completion of the audit.
Right.
Yeah.
The BOE may.
Yeah.
After the end of the
So-
fiscal year and upon completion of the audit, because I'll read, okay, got it.
Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah,
Is that-
I think so.
Yeah.
And again, we can always revisit this if we decide it's not clear enough or we
Yeah.
need to add something.
Sounds
If,
good.
if it's unworkable or whatever.
Yep.
Okay,
And then
so-
everything else remains. So that would
Okay.
be my suggested,
Okay, so you're
Well,
moving
okay.
to accept the policy with that,
As
with that
amended.
amendment.
correct.
Can I ask a question though before we
Hold
accept
on,
that?
Liz, we really got to look for a second and then we can discuss. Is there a second?
I'll second
Okay.
that again.
Motion? Okay,
Bill?
Bill?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Liz, sorry.
So there's no mention of the 2% non-lapsing account?
That's
Does-
separate.
That's different. Yeah.
Okay, so they get their 2% non-lapsing and then this is
It's up to
whatever's
them.
left
They-
beyond
They would
that.
decide, they would decide if they even wanted to use the 2%.
They don't have to.
Right, they may decide, this gives them the option to roll it all now into the capital fund if they would like to.
Yeah.
Or they may say, can we put some in the 2% and the remainder? This is just setting the rules for this particular.
And
Right.
just as a point of clarification, they can put 2% of their budget in the non-lapsing account regardless, because that's the state law now.
Right.
So that you
Right.
couldn't influence either way.
It wouldn't
Right.
be up to us, right?
It used to be a Board of Finance vote, and this is kind of where some of the concern, I think, where the trust came, just to kind of, I know Liz was asking about some of the background, but there were a couple of years where we just said no. And the reason was because we asked for a longer term plan to support that, and we never really got it.
Right.
And I think the board's kind of on board, if you'll forgive that, with the idea of producing a longer plan. So I think, we're getting past that, but that was one of the reasons that kind of led us to this separate
Right.
capital fund, which I fully agree with for a whole lot of other reasons as well. So,
Can I just ask a question, please?
Go
Just so
ahead,
I'm
Kim.
clear with
Yep.
this. So they'll have their 2% fund that they're entitled to, of course. And then they'll also have the ability to just keep any money left over in their budget. So there'll be those two.
that money would go into the
Am I
capital
clear
fund.
with that? Okay.
I'm reading the 2%, the rules for it, and I believe it's up to them. If they wanted to take, they'll have their unexpended funds. This is, with that, say
Percent.
there was 100,000 left. Probably, I mean, it reads in here that they can request any portion of the unexpended funds. The 2% or whatever, go into that non-lapsing for whatever they did with that. I don't know if I have all the history of that. But they also could take all of the unexpended funds if we adopt our new policy and put it in the capital fund account.
Right.
And might not even ask us to put any in the 2%. So it's their money. Am I wrong, Eric?
No, you're right in the sense that the 2%, they have every opportunity. They have every right without your oversight at all.
Right.
Up to 2% of their budget, they can designate for the 2% non-lapsing account. The thing I think that is unclear, and I know when we asked the auditor was of the opinion that the 2% non-lapsing account could also be spent on capital.
Right.
But several people, including Shannon, have told me point blank that I'm wrong. And I don't know the answer. All I know is what the auditor said. He said, it's an educational expense. It's a capital educational expense, so you could spend it. So I don't have any kind of legal opinion other than what the auditor said. In their shoes, I would probably max the 2% non-lapsing account and then put the rest in unexpended fund balance, because I think it probably gives them more flexibility. And the 2% non-lapsing account is completely under their control. It may be held in town accounts, and that's a state policy. But if they request money for it, the treasurer has to release that money. That's not an oversight thing by anybody other than the Board of Ed.
I just don't want Kim and Liz to think they're two things, like it's one pot of money that they're deciding where it goes. There's only one total amount. It's just
Right,
where they
there's-
decide to put it.
So, right, it's theirs, they have a surplus. 2% goes into their 2% non-lapsing, and then this remaining balance, they either need to put it into this fund, this capital fund, or it goes back to the town. That's the
Exactly.
option, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Basically.
Well, you haven't been involved in the board with all, and I get it, and I understand you're coming at it from the correct angle that you want to. We've done a lot of work to get it to this point so that this account it is a town account, but it's there for capital projects that we already know are gonna have to be done. So
The
Right,
other
right,
thing is, they don't have to put into the 2% account.
You don't have,
right? They
that's
can
what I'm saying, right? They don't.
Now,
Yeah.
now I don't know how
But
this
they-
is going to play out. Eric's scenario is possible. I don't know. I know there's some ambiguity in the language, and so decisions can be made, and we're going to kind of find out. And I think we should roll
Yeah.
with it for now and see how it works. And if it's not working, we can revisit.
Right.
But ultimately, the idea is they should be able to put aside money for these capital, we all know that are coming.
Yeah.
And I don't want them to be in the mindset of either we put in the 2% non-lapsing or we lose it.
right.
So
Well, that's
that
what
was
this
the idea
does,
behind
right?
this account.
So, yeah.
That's it. That's it. And I'm done. I don't want to, sorry, I don't want to belabor it.
And this is already money that was voted on, it's prior years. It's not going forward. We're just talking about a policy that's gonna take money that's left over, and instead of getting spent on other things, it's gonna go to projects that need to be done. That's,
I understand that.
yeah, no, and I'm not trying to fight you. I know you're coming at it
I
because.
think you guys are saying this. She just is
Yeah,
asking.
yeah, I
Yeah,
understand.
of
I understand the,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's.
Do
where
we
we're
want to
at.
vote on this, guys?
Yes.
We haven't voted yet, so.
Yes.
Does anybody have any other further discussions directly pertaining to the motion to accept the policy with the amendment that Rob proposed? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, any opposed? No, any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. We'll use this as our policy, and as several have noted, we can always change it or add to it or modify it if we decide we need to. And of course, as I think others suggested, we can pass this on to the Board of Ed for their input. If they have some requested language or ideas, we can always do that. So,
The idea
okay, we'll
are-
move on to 6B, which is budget discussion. So we have several sub items here. Eric, I presume that you had had these added to the agenda? Did you want to drop
Yes, they are in the packet. I just did want to say, so you all can get a heads up, because at some point you're gonna have to start figuring out when you want to do budget meetings. And that is, my goal is to have a pretty well fleshed out draft around February 3rd for the town general and for the capital budgets for both the Board of Selectmen and Finance to review. And then I will be available for meetings on a weekly basis from there until the budget passes. Other than I am taking some time in February or in March and taking a week then, but I will only miss one budget meeting doing that. Or one potential meeting doing that.
So this letter that you have outlined to the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, Board of Ed, and to the treasurer gives that general outline for the dates you're proposing. So that makes sense.
Correct. So you can feel free to schedule budget meetings. I know there was some concern that your time frame to do this was going to be considerably crunched. You can feel free to schedule budget meetings from the beginning of February on.
Mark, I was
coordinate with the
hoping
board.
that we were gonna start mid-February. I don't know. I'll open it up to see what everyone else thinks. I know
What
we're
were you-
gonna get it in our hands. I was hoping to review it a little bit. Are we? Because if we started mid-February, we're gonna go well into March like we always do. Unless everybody's, I mean, that's a whole month sooner than we do normally, but if other people are in favor for the start of February, I'll sit back and listen.
Well, I don't think we need to make a necessarily decision right now, but so
Okay.
starting February 5th. So I think what Eric is just proposing is that as of that date, we should be able to start having meetings, whether we choose to
Got it.
have them or not is kind of another
Right.
matter. The only one we actually have to have is the town hearing, right? So,
Yep.
but okay.
Okay,
And then propose that we get the Board of Ed on the 15th, and then we'd go ahead and follow up with meetings as we would propose them. Okay.
right, and then I'll go through this other stuff real quick, considering, assuming I can figure out which, is that the one, hopefully? Okay, hopefully you're looking at the correct thing.
Yeah.
So I just want to bring a couple things, and I know I've talked about this, but our working assumption at this point should be that the grand list will be flat. I'm hoping it's slightly positive, but it could also be slightly negative overall due to a series of changes in how taxation is done in the state of Connecticut. I'm proposing probably pretty minimal changes in this budget versus next year's budget. I think as a town, we're about funded correctly in terms of capital and operating expenses. So I'm not anticipating any major programmatic changes in the town for this year. There are some potential for significant personnel changes. As some of you know, the municipal retirement program, which is called MRF or MERS, depending on which acronym you use, has changed their formula for how they calculate cost of living increases. And it seems like anybody that was going to retire in the next 3 years or 4 years even probably makes sense to go right now. So I think there are 2 employees potentially an outside chance of a third taking that. There's 3 where it might be beneficial for them to go right now. So that might be effect on the town. I don't want to talk about who that is. That's out of the range, just so that you're aware of that. The other good thing is the diesel and heating fuel costs are quite a bit lower than we are currently. We locked in diesel for the year at around $2.57 a gallon. So that's great. That's 30 or so cents a gallon cheaper than it was last year. So pretty happy with that. Maybe it goes down some more, but historically, over the last 20 or so years, sometime in December is the best time to lock in. So I got permission from the Board of Selectmen and locked into that. So as we talked about in terms of the major projects, it's going to be Bunker Hill, Lake Road, finishing off the community center, and the Route 316 multi-use pathway. The only one I don't have fully covered right now is the Route 316 multi-use pathway. I actually have construction funds, but there's still a gap in the design funds. And I'm hoping to get an exact number on that prior to budget season. And then that's either going to have to be budgeted somehow in this year or put off for a year. Questions on any of that? Okay.
Nope.
Here is the good news. And that our percentage of enrollment, as I said, 3 years ago, and then 2 years ago, and then last year, and then this
Wow.
year
Wow.
is still going down. So the great thing about that is RAM budget can increase 3.4%. And our town levy will stay the same. So that's the number to look at. I don't know what they're gonna actually come in for a budget, so if it comes in at 10%, it's still going up pretty considerably. If it comes in at 3 or 4%, it's basically cost neutral for the town.
Eric,
So, yep,
my question was, RAM voted to accept students from Columbia now. I thought that was gonna start this year. Is that, or I guess next year? Is that true?
that is true.
And so will that affect these percentages?
Uh,
Because you're adding another town in there, it should change all of these percentages.
I
well,
think they're still under negotiation and we don't, it may help actually if they offset some of the overhead costs, right? But I don't
I'm
know
not
that-
sure. I'm not sure it would add them to this percentage either. I think it might be like a surplus that they didn't distribute according to this formula. I'm not really sure.
right.
So they don't necessarily become like a voting it's part of it, like it's Andover, Marble, Hebron, but they don't become like a voting member of the RAM board. They're just gonna send students at a cost per head. I'm just trying to figure out how that affects.
I don't
Yes.
think we really know yet.
That
though.
was my understanding of the idea,
Hmm.
was that they would send students, but they don't necessarily, it wouldn't be RAM or whatever.
It'd be one of the
wouldn't be adding
schools of
them.
choice, right? So it's not like it's all in.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, the acronym would be CRAM. No,
Damn
they,
you, I thought of that like 10 seconds after I said it.
yeah. Columbia sends kids to offers their kids multiple high schools as
Right.
options. I think currently they have E.O. Smith, Wyndham Tech, and maybe
Lebanon, isn't it Lebanon? No.
maybe it's Lebanon. I'm not actually sure. I know they every so many years they go out to bid essentially with all the local schools to and then parents have a choice about where to send their kids.
Gotcha.
So that's all I know about RAM. RAM Superintendent Colin did email me this week and asked me whether there was a specific date that you as a board wanted to get the RAM budget presentation. And have him come to present at the board and talk through budget. I said I would bring it up with you. It can be whenever you want to schedule that.
Well, in February.
Yeah, probably one of our budget meetings.
Do we remember
Early.
when we did it last year?
Do we have a date by which it'll be ready to discuss?
Well, I think he basically said he's probably prepared to talk about it in some form now. I mean, if you're talking about it now, it hasn't actually gone through RAM, so it's preliminary.
Right.
If you talk about it later, it's more finalized.
Okay,
So yeah,
yeah, we'll try to get some more information on when that would be ready. I mean, later the better. I mean, it's one of these things we just simply don't have much control over, so it really doesn't affect our budget, just as long as we have a number to plug. I mean, it does affect our budget, we just don't control it, but, all right.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to hear from them when it's
Yeah,
more
they feel pretty
well-baked.
solid about it, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to. We talk to them now, it feels way too early.
Yeah.
At the
this is
same
way
time,
too
you don't
early.
want to be like right before. It's tricky, but I personally don't want to talk to them too early.
Yeah,
so
Eastern Highlands.
Liz, is your question about this or previous?
Yeah, cosmetology permits.
Yep.
What is that?
So we are covered by a health district called Eastern Highlands Health District. It is a
Yeah.
state law that towns have to have a whole series of capabilities. No small town has the capability to do that on their own.
Right.
A city like or a municipality like Willimantic does, but Eastern Highlands Health District is, I think, 10 or 11 towns in Eastern Connecticut. And so these are the things that the state mandates that the health departments regulate. So yes, every cosmetology, and this has been new in the last couple of years, so they're still adapting to that, has to be inspected on an annual basis, and charged a fee for that service. So they do every commercial, food establishment. They do cosmetology, they do group homes. They review all subdivision plans for subsurface septic. Anytime there's the potential for a sewage installation, they review those. They do vaccine administration programs throughout the district, including the Andover Elementary School. They do a ton of stuff overall. So the reason why I wanted to bring this to your attention is kind of the bottom line. So this budget was proposed by the director, Rob Miller. And it will go to, there will be a public hearing. You can all go to that next month if you so desire. I do sit on both the policy board and the executive. I am technically the assistant treasurer, but I have no duties when it comes to being the assistant treasurer, because the town of Mansfield's paid treasurer is also the actual paid treasurer for the health district. So it's just essentially the third executive board position. So their budget right here, the important part is this is what is budgeted for the member town contributions. It's going up from 474,000 to 486,000 in round terms.
Can you
Sorry.
point, I can't see what you're, oh, okay. Oh, the
stuff in
proposed,
blue.
okay,
Right.
go ahead.
And so the thing to keep in mind is that what the towns pay into the program is about half the total cost of programs. Broadly speaking, they get three big buckets of funds. One comes from the town, one comes from the state and federal government, and one comes from service fees. So if you're installing a septic field, you pay for the review, and that money goes to Eastern Highlands Health District, and their sanitarian comes out and inspects. So this is from our perspective, this is the number we focus on, is what is the total budgeted increase. And then the question, so overall, the increase for the member towns is about 3%, but every year, the State Department of Health decides what the population in each town is. So some towns have declined in population. Some towns have increased in population slightly. So that affects the rates for the individual town. They have our town listed as 3,144 people, which is down about 15 people from the last time they did the survey. And I don't know where the state comes up with those population numbers, because it doesn't seem to correlate to the American Community Survey data, which is like what the federal government does and seems to be the most accurate numbers. But I don't know. That's where they come up with it. So they come up with a proposed per capita for each of the town. I'm going to flip down to Andover. So the bottom line is their proposed budget is $19,340, which is an increase to the town of Andover around $680. If you have any feedback for the health department that you want to relay through me, I would be happy to do it. If you have any specific questions, and then this I also put in Oh, yeah, that's pretty much everything I put in for the health department. There is some more details in there. I didn't give you their whole budget package. It's about 25 pages long. I just gave you snapshots of what I thought, kind of the bottom lines were. And I'll take any questions on that if you have it.
Questions?
We're certainly lucky to be part of,
Yes, we are.
one of the towns, because obviously it's a big expense, but by being part of the district, very helpful. No.
Right.
Yeah, I don't have any
Good deal.
questions.
Yeah.
Seems fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will say one of the huge headwinds that health districts face is that there is an extreme shortage of professionals to do this. It takes, if you start off with somebody with a microbiology degree, it's probably about 4 years of training to get them to be a licensed sanitarian. 4 years of on-the-job training before he's really launched on his own. The towns and health departments are all poaching from each other pretty incessantly. So the biggest issue the healthcare, the district has faced is really sharply increased personnel costs. And trying to maintain staff. So
No,
So
thank you
that-
for presenting it. Yeah.
yep. Okay.
Yeah.
So we went over the major trends, enrollment data, the district budget. The final budget to actual, that was what I had it just got stuck in the packet earlier, so we don't need to go over that.
Yeah.
And so I also included in there what I gave to the department heads and board chairmen for what I wanted back for information.
Mhm.
Which is, so the basic procedure is the first thing that happens is each department head or chair or somebody that's responsible for some aspect of the money gets a budget worksheet, which they are expected to fill out. And then what I want back every year is detailed written explanations of, you can have a line item that says, $700 for ink or $700 for, copier supplies. And the average person looks at that and says, that's nuts. But then you find out it's the building department, and the ink for that big chart plotter is really expensive. So that kind of thing. And my goal is to get that back. So when you ask me questions, I have all the physical material to refer to. I'm happy to pass all of that on to you if you want to review it all yourself. You always have the option of bringing in people to ask questions directly about their budgets as you desire. Or you can relay them through me, whatever you're happy with as a process.
Eric, when are
So-
those going out to everybody?
Those have been out for 3 weeks. So every department has its budget at this point.
I haven't seen anything for ZBA.
Then email me tomorrow morning
Okay.
and we'll figure out why.
Does this come in like Excel format, or what does it look like?
It does. We send them an Excel worksheet. And we ask them to send it back electronically, because if we send it back electronically, it can be fit directly into our spreadsheet without additional somebody transposing all the numbers. Not every
Okay.
board and commission is sophisticated enough to be able to do that in Excel spreadsheet. A lot of them we get back and we deal with it as they are. I did have a discussion with the treasurer today. I'm hoping that she's going to have me back the overall budget worksheet template pretty quickly, so we can start the departments that have already given us their numbers. You know, and the other thing is the other thing I always ask is for them to let me know what numbers are verified and what numbers, are uncertain. Because we know 6 months out or 8 months out before the fiscal year, you may not have all the contracts lined up. Many things you're going to have an exact number that's reliable, like, because they're existing contract, multi-year contracts, and other things, may have a fair bit of uncertainty to it. So I want to know that what numbers, when I'm presenting you in February, are locked in and what numbers are variable and why. So that's basically what my ask is to all the department heads. Then it gets collated at our end and presented back out. And I gave them an example. I took one board or commission, and then, specified kind of the level of detail that I wanted for it in an explanation. So hopefully we get the information back that we want. So that's kind of everything I have for that. Unless you have questions.
No, thank you for showing us.
Yeah, I appreciate you explaining the process. I mean, I definitely had some questions about how this is done annually, and this really helps me understand it better. So thank you.
Sure. But what I would also say is that as the Board of Finance, you have a lot of control over how this is done, as much or as little as you want to. At one point, the Board of Finance would bring in every single board and commission and compile the budget completely themselves. We've switched to me providing the preliminary budget and then you having the opportunity to review and adjust as you see fit. I think that's a workable, and that kind of aligns with the changes in the charter now. But if there's specific departments you want to talk to, in terms of specifics, there are some things that are out of your hands. Like, for instance, the Board of Selectmen technically sets the salary and benefits for everybody who is a municipal employee that is not elected. You, as the Board of Finance, set the salary for elected officials. So those go directly to you. The others come through the Board of Selectmen. Other than that, everything else is pretty much under your review.
Yeah. And just, for the benefit of those that haven't gone through this, typically with the departments, we don't talk to them directly, as Eric mentioned, and I think it's a much more efficient process to have them kind of collate it and, challenge the folks, because he knows what they're doing. He knows what they've done in the past. He's very familiar with the operations. Some of the exceptions have been usually Department of Public Works. That's a big spend department. So sometimes, especially if they're looking for equipment funding or something like that in advance, we'll have Jay come in, and he and Eric will talk about some of the, if they have some big changes. We've also had the fire department come in.
Fire
because
department.
That's a big cost item, and often something we need to allocate significantly capital and other expenditures to.
We'll be looking at that tomorrow night, I
And-
think.
And Ram, obviously, he's.
And RAM
Yes.
and the AES, of course.
And Val.
Right. I mean,
Val-
RAM is big, but it's not part of our budget theoretically.
Yeah, we can't
that's
change
our
it up.
budget.
We can just put the
But,
line.
but he's always been kind enough to come.
Yeah. No, but it's important to hear from them.
Yeah.
But
That's why I-
like tomorrow CIP meets, and we are one of our agenda item. I glanced at it quickly. It's a significant expenditure for their turnout gear. So there's a thing that's going to be bubbling up, and then we're gonna be dealing with in this budget cycle
Certain-
probably, or at
Certain
least
expenditure for what?
Turnout gear.
their turnout. I think it's their turnout gear. Eric, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but
What
it's
is
their
that?
gear. It's
Turnout
their
gear is the equipment they wear.
respirators and
Yeah.
Once a
everything.
fire, their suits, their air tanks,
Oh.
all their apparatus.
Some of their stuff is expiring. It has a certain shelf life, certain use life, and I think some of their stuff is up.
Eric, how many years will you, and that's why I kind of like, I know you said you could get the worksheet or the spreadsheet rather, the budget spreadsheet to the boards, maybe the beginning of February, and then we would take a look at it. And at that time, if we had questions, maybe as a board, we would have a department come in if we needed to or decide then. But it's been mentioned to me before, so I want to make sure, how many years back will you show us for reference on the spreadsheet? Will we go a good couple years back? Especially
Yeah,
for new members, you know?
Bill, so one of the things I wanted to do differently, and I've already spoke to the treasurer about it, is I've gotten beaten up a few times over not providing the information in the 5 parallel columns outlined in the chart.
Yeah, the
So-
chart is very specific.
We will go back to that. And the part of the problem is it requires, because every year we add a few line items, sometimes subtract a few line items. And so we can't just cut and paste columns from previous years into it. So there's actually a fair bit of manipulation to do that. So, but that's why we have a treasurer. So yeah, you will get multiple years of data. And some of you have requested of me the previous year's approved Excel spreadsheets of the budgets that got approved. I can give you, 5 years worth of those if you want them. I have them. on my
Haven't we
computer.
typically done like a 3-year rolling?
Yeah,
I feel like it's been 3.
I
Yeah.
think it's been usually 3-year. Isn't
has
that
been.
right?
Yeah, I would have to go back. I pulled out the charter and figured out what columns they actually request.
Yep.
And kind of specified that so we present it exactly how the charter pulls it out. So hopefully I'll stop getting beat up over that.
My recollection is in the past, we've done the budget workups. We've been looking at 3-year averages or 3-year, not 3 averages,
Trends.
sorry, 3 years
Right.
of experience.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna propose, if we don't have any other specific questions for Eric, we do have one other agenda item which we added at the beginning. So it might take a few minutes. We have some other things, so. There's no objections. We'll move on to 6C, and this is the discussion of the request from the Board of Ed to release $48,600 for the Fuss and O'Neill MEP. I'm not sure what MEP is, and it's basically
mechanical, electrical,
Plumbing.
electrical, plumbing.
Mechanical, electrical.
plumbing. So
measure or
that's,
something?
Plumbing.
okay,
Engineer.
thank you.
Planning.
I have facilities responsibility at work among a lot of other things, and I've never heard it put that way. But at any rate, so the Fuss and O'Neill proposal is in there. We've also had a letter from the school board from Caitlin. Basically, this is in support of the plumbing renovation that's required in the wing, the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade wing. This proposal is for $48,600. Full support from schematic design through construction administration. So it won't be, the entire, necessarily the entire thing, but this is
This is the planning. This isn't the
Yeah,
actual.
this is. the
planning and
plan.
management, right? So, and
Yeah.
and probably review. So they're asking for an appropriation of $48,600 from the AES Capital Fund for this capital project to kick it off. It's in that third paragraph that they said.
Yeah.
Um,
And they had another bid, but it was
Yeah, it
significantly
didn't really
less,
cover
but they
everything
didn't
they
like
felt
it.
yeah.
Yeah. But something like there was a $28,000 bid that just didn't really
And they
address
had,
their
and they had a
concerns.
successful experience with Fuss and O'Neill for previous projects. So,
Yeah.
I
And
know
the break-
personally, we use them in my business from time to time. They're one of our project managers of record. So
Yeah,
anyway,
you guys have had decent experience with them, Mark?
yeah. Yeah.
I know that in
We
my
use
industry,
some
they
engineering reviews,
they have a
heating,
good-
cooling, that kind of thing. Yeah.
they have a very good reputation, I would say overall. From
Yeah.
an electrical standpoint, I know their work.
And when you need an expert, it's been pretty successful for us.
Yeah. I knew that this was going to cost us. I just kind of hoped it would be less than
Mhm.
this.
Yeah.
Well,
This
It's-
isn't even the project.
No,
no,
it's,
this isn't. So. I
No,
don't
this
know-
is just the planning.
Yeah.
They-
Well,
jeepers.
no, it's the documents that are needed to go out to bid too, right?
they will oversee the bidding process as well. They gave you
Yeah.
stages of what there's like 3 or 4 phases that they will cover.
Yeah, if you
This project that if you scroll down,
you'll see
there's the
that,
scope of the services and
Right.
right.
It's a
Schematic
full
design,
project
design development,
management.
Design documents, these are all part of any standard contract for bid, and it describes different phases of the
Yeah.
entire
Yeah.
project and what they cover, so
Yeah.
it does.
Well, construction
include-
management's a big one too. I
right,
mean,
the construction management of the whole.
Yeah,
project.
they're doing, this is holistic. They're doing it all.
Could you scroll down and?
Which
you
I
can
think was
see-
the issue with the other bid, right? That this proposal covers everything, and the cheaper one didn't, and that was the
Didn't
issue.
have the plans, right?
Contract documents is what you actually take and use to go out to bid with, and that's what the job is built by. It's,
and that has to be done right, right?
and it has to be done right. It's bidding support, going out to bid. Construction administration is a huge one. This is a very complete package right here. I used to teach this class on how these documents are put together, so I can tell you that this is a very, very complete.
Phil, be careful what you say. in
All right,
public
never mind.
here. Get drafted.
I know where you're going with that, Mark.
Ah,
So, I guess they're asking us to release the money from the capital fund. Yeah, personally, I'm in favor of doing
Yep.
that. But I don't know if anybody has any other.
I mean,
Comments?
my
Ron?
take is, unless we think this is egregiously wrong, we should go ahead and release their money.
In the spirit of our policy, right? So,
I think so.
Mhm. Because this is the startup of everything happening
Mhm.
for this number one on their priority list, so.
Yeah, I mean, we
Yeah.
all know this plumbing project problem has been an issue for some time now. They've
Yeah.
had bathrooms shut down in the school now for how long now? God,
It's
we
been
must
a
be
long
pushing
time.
a year. So yeah. I mean, my gut take is let's go. Number one. Number two, if everybody that has technical expertise on this board, 2 of you have just weighed in and basically said, yeah, this is right. Let's do it.
Can I make 2 comments?
Sure.
go ahead.
Comment number 1, and I'm somewhat biased. I do like Fuss and O'Neill, in the sense that, my normal cycling partner is a retired, VP of Fuss and O'Neill. And one of my other guys I'm going on vacation ran Fuss and O'Neill's New Hampshire and Vermont operations. I've had Fuss and O'Neill bid on a bunch of stuff on the town. Honestly, I've never chosen them because they are an expensive contractor. Not saying they're not high quality, they are. They do excellent work. So I guess it's just a question of whether I mean, I would not hire them for the town's perspective, but maybe it's appropriate for the school. That's kind of your judgment. The other bid from AZ Engineering was, I don't know whether the school got any other bids. This is the only one they showed me. The contract documents and scope of work for AZ Engineering was, I think, $19,000. So you're
That doesn't have construction management, right? On that one, Eric, is that true? There's no construction
so
management involved.
it was so limited construction management in terms of they would this agreement got you completely through the bid walkthrough, the development of the RFPs, help in selecting the contractor. But this is a little firm. It's not this is a 3-person operation, not Fuss and O'Neill, which is a really large operation that just bought a shiny new building in Hartford. So pluses and minuses to both. I am not opposed to you selecting, but just realize that you're paying for you're paying for a really good contractor, but you're also paying a premium to get it. And so just as long as you understand that, then that's not a bad.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to work
I
with
guess
Fuss
as far
let's
as-
put it that way.
As going forward, a company like Fuss and O'Neill, you're probably not going to run into issues down the road. I don't know. I'll leave it at that. I just think
Yeah.
getting
I feel like there was
peace of
something.
mind.
Oh, go ahead.
I just think there's peace of mind going with a company like Fuss and O'Neill
Yeah.
that you might not get with a small firm like AZ. But I've never dealt with AZ. I don't know them at all.
My only concern is whether the two bids are apples to apples. If
That's
they're
all I
not,
wanted to say, Rob. They're not apples
Yeah.
to
Not
apples.
apples to apples.
This isn't my expertise, so I'm gonna sit back, but Caitlin did
Yeah, me
make us
too.
aware of saying that there was something in the plans, I don't have it called up on my screen, that maybe was lacking in the less expensive quote. Whereas I feel like she said something like, and that was maybe, I wish I had it in front of me.
I had it
It was
up.
like $28,000 difference for this, or a percentage of the plans
Yeah.
were
it
not
said-
included in the
after-
other.
It says that the language she has in her letter is, after careful consideration, we determined that it failed to provide many things such as architectural plans.
Thank you.
Plans are estimated to be about 60% of the cost.
Yeah.
So,
It's not an apples to apples.
yeah, so.
That's
then
my
they'll-
issue.
they'll-
Is if it was just a question of big firm with great reputation and small firm, I don't know. But if it's not apples to apples, if it's hard to evaluate it, especially for somebody like me who has zero expertise in this area. I am so deferring to anybody here who knows this stuff because I don't. I'm but a
Well,
humble history major who does
and
insurance claims.
I would think that we would also defer to the judgment of the Board of Education. These are their
Yeah.
funds. If they really felt like they could get away and save some money, I'm assuming that they would do that.
Yeah, I mean, they
If
would
we
want
saw
to.
something egregious in there, like, then I would be a little more concerned. But they've made the judgment. It looks reasonable to me. I think that we defer to their judgment on this as long as we don't think it's completely outlandish. That's my take.
So I guess the next step would be that I could move that we
So we can
Go
move,
ahead
we
and, transfer
appropriate
money.
we release the money at 48,600 from the capital fund.
Right. So, all right, I'll go ahead and make that motion. I will move that we, in accordance with the request for the Board of Education, appropriate $48,600 for this particular capital project, or rather the engineering for this capital project, as per the request that we've received.
Do I
I
want
would-
a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Bill, we have further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Hi.
Any opposed? Anybody abstaining? Okay, hearing none passes unanimously. Thank you.
Cool.
Okay, so I guess that takes us to our next agenda item, which is item 7, board open discussion. Is there anything else that the board members would like to discuss?
I already mentioned mine. CIP meeting is tomorrow night.
Wow.
I've gotten a heads up just based on the, packet and everything that we have some stuff coming down the pike from the fire department. for some expenditure. So just FYI, I really just quickly glanced at it. Eric could probably tell you the exact figures, but it looked like about $250,000 worth of turnout gear and stuff like that.
Oh,
I'll wait till after we have firm information, so.
Yeah.
But just FYI, we'll be talking about this tomorrow night, and then our next meeting, we'll take it up for real.
Okay, good, thank you. Anybody have anything else? None? Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 8, which is correspondence. I think all the correspondence that I've gotten is either stuff that Joanne has distributed to all of us, I think. And then there was the stuff from Caitlin that came in about the Fuss and O'Neill proposal for the bathroom remodeling. I forwarded all that to you. Anybody have anything else?
No.
Okay, we move on to agenda item 9, which is public speak. We do not appear to have any members of the public here. Get my hand out of the way, stop pushing the buttons.
No,
just
there's
us.
nobody.
Okay. So I guess we'll move on to adjournment. Anybody like to make the motion to adjourn?
Yes, Bill.
Okay, Bill,
Second.
making a
Make your
motion
motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Okay, Kimberly seconds. Thank you. That's one I saw anyway. All right. Any discussion?
no.
All those in favor say aye.
Bye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oh.
Any abstentions? All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Long meeting for a December. We usually try to
I
keep this one
know.
short.
Thanks
but,
all. Happy
a lot
holidays.
going
Happy
on.
holidays.
Joanne, thank you for your
Merry
work.
Christmas,
on the
everyone.
board meeting and
Merry
everybody
Christmas.
else.
Bye-bye.